We'll get started here in just a minute. Grateful to everyone for coming. Thank you so much, everybody who signed up to join us today. Thank you, everybody, all my colleagues who are working behind the scenes. Thank you to our great panelists who you're going to meet in just a second. Closed captions are available, and the session is being recorded and will be made available later on in our newsletter. So please be sure to sign up. We'll be taking questions through the Q&A box, not through the chat. So make sure you pop your questions in the right spot so we can take them later on in the webinar. And of course, please feel free to share your insights, flattering screenshots, and all of that good stuff with us on social media. We're on Twitter and we're on Blue Sky at Indie Journalists at bluesky.social. Of course, please take shared responsibility for your impact when you're using the chat. Strive to balance empowerment with understanding that everybody here is coming from a different place. This is a space that centers journalists of color and marginalized voices. All are welcome and share the space. If you are new to IIJ events, please listen first and be open to learning. We'd also ask that you consider making a donation if you're able. This helps us put on these webinars mostly free of charge for our community, and it helps us make these resources accessible for everyone. We'll take just another minute before we get started. Let everybody filter in. Wonderful to see all these introductions in the chat. Wow, howdy, everybody. Awesome. All right. If you're just joining us, my name is Anne-Marie Awad. I'm the editorial director here at the Institute for Independent Journalists. Our mission is the financial and emotional sustainability of freelancers of color, and we're so glad you're here. I want to hand it off to our moderator for today, Jamila Bey. Jamila Bey is an independent journalist, moderator, and former editorial director at WHYY News who asks the kinds of questions that makes the comms team sweat. With more than 20 years reporting and hosting for NPR, The Washington Post, and Viacom BET, she's made a career of telling uncomfortable truths and pushing newsrooms to stop doing things the way they've always been done. Now she works independently, advocating for journalists of color to get paid, get free, and take up space. Her work appears in NPR, The Washington Post, and The New York Times. Jamila.
Thank you so much, Anne-Marie. Welcome one, welcome all. We are delighted to have you with us. I am going to be your moderator for this panel, which is to say I'm going to talk the least out of everyone here. Let's get everyone started, and we're going to have a very informative and enjoyable time together. So thank you. Let us start with introductions of the panel. Let's kick it off now. Julia Edelstein. She is a features editor at New York, where she commissions and edits ambitious features, columns, and essays that focus on health and parenting, both online as well as print. Before joining New York 2 years ago, she was the editor-in-chief of Parents, the largest parenting publication in America, overseeing the brand through the pandemic and through the publication of its final print issue. Julia has also held staff editing positions at Health, Real Simple, and Good Housekeeping. She started her career covering the New York City parenting scene for Time Out New York Kids, and she resides in New York City with her husband, 2 sons, and their new doggy, Rascal. So, woof, woof. Welcome, Julia. Keisha Weir. She is the national editor at KFF Health News. I remember when it was called something else. KFF Health News is state-based coverage. Before she joined the organization back in 2019, she led the state politics team at the Center for Public Integrity. She previously covered local news for the Washington Examiner, the Charlotte Observer, and the Boston Globe. Under her leadership, work has won multiple honors, including from the National Press Club, the Online News Association, the Edward R. Murrow Awards, the Gerald Loeb Awards, and the Association of Healthcare Journalists. And finally, but certainly not least, we've got Maddie Oatman. She is a senior editor and writer at Mother Jones. She edits features and manages the magazine's culture and food sections. Stories she's edited have won honors such as James Beard Awards and National Magazine Awards. Her writing has also appeared in Outside, The Rumpus, the San Francisco Chronicle, and the Best American Science and Nature Writing, among others. So let's give a hearty online happy welcome to our panel this fine day. All right. So let us begin with a couple of, I think I just froze. Oh my goodness.
You're not frozen
No?
for us.
Okay. Okay. I'm sorry. Forgive me. So lovely. So let us continue for here. So let's get us started in what we're going to do. Can you each share, please, what you oversee? Describe for your media outlets what publications, again, and remind us of the sections you lead, the stories, and what you accept from independent journalists. So, how much of the work do you take that's freelance relative to what's in house? And I want to start with KFF Health News.
Sure. And I
Keisha.
probably need to explain a little bit about what KFF Health News is, because you're not the only person who struggles to. We used to be Kaiser Health News. We've had other names in the past, but we're essentially a wire service for um, healthcare policy news. And what we do is we write stories, we put them on our website, we partner with usually national partners first, but then we open up our stories with a Creative Commons license so that any outlet can pick them up. So a typical story will get picked up by an average of like 60 different outlets around the country, ranging from really small outlets to CNN, USA Today, Washington Post, New York Times. So we're kind of a feeder, and we're really trying to get our stories out into places that don't have healthcare journalists. So I'm our national editor. We have reporters in and journalists in 21 states and DC, but that's not all of them. And so we're really looking for places where we don't have reporters on the ground to be able to tell stories about how healthcare policy is affecting real people's lives. And we interpret healthcare policy pretty broadly. So that's, obviously public health, Medicare, Medicaid, gun violence, food insecurity, lots of stuff like that. We don't take opinion pieces. We don't take stories about medical studies unless there's a broader arc to it. But I can be a point of contact and funnel any freelance pitches to editors around our newsroom based on the geography of where you as a freelancer are. And we really are looking for sharp pitches of stories that you can't read elsewhere, that haven't been done by other outlets, but that are relevant to the news of the day. And obviously, there have been a lot of healthcare policy changes that probably some of you are feeling acutely as you try to afford insurance. We're really interested in stories that are related to right now the impact of the Trump administration on healthcare policy and how that's affecting real people's lives.
Now, thank you so much, Keisha. That's very helpful. I'm glad you brought that up. And again, I'm going to keep having to look at the KFF Health News. Yeah, thank you for reminding everybody. I know who you are. New York Magazine comprises several different editorial titles, of course, Curb Vulture, Rub Street Intelligencer, The Cut, etc. So a story that might not be a fit for one vertical may fit another. And New York Magazine has 7 features editors who assign pieces across the verticals and print. Features are the highest level, most ambitious journalism the magazine puts out, quote, and Julia mostly oversees health and parenting coverage. Julia, you are the one who works exclusively with freelancers. Pop in here and talk about what you are looking for and how freelancers need to be thinking about getting their work to you.
Yeah. Yeah, so I do sit on a team. So we have we're a very large team at New York Magazine across all those sites. And I sit on this centralized team of features editors who work primarily on, like I mentioned, the most ambitious sort of enterprise level journalism. And while everybody on that team works with freelancers, most of them are primarily focused on staff writers, whereas I'm exclusively working with freelancers. Um, and what I'm looking for are really like I'm looking for surprise and delight and the sort of New York sensibility in the pitches that I receive. I'm looking for stories that I haven't already read somewhere that feel timely and now, but that are also like deeply revealing often about the human experience or kind of tap into something that everyone's thinking about, but no one has said yet. I'm looking for really like fresh, interesting personal essays about health and parenting that, especially from journalists who have some reporting background and can maybe meld personal narrative with some element of reporting. Um, and yeah, I mean, one amazing thing I guess about working at New York Magazine is, while there are certain certain things that are a fit, like there's nothing that we won't do to some extent. Like we're really our journalism is extremely unafraid and unflinching, and so I enjoy pitches that aren't necessarily safe, provided you have a way of like delivering what you're promising, but like there's no such thing as sort of like too wild of an idea to some extent.
Excellent. Thank you so very much. Now, Mother Jones is mostly staff written and mainly works with freelancers for the print issues, which are 6 a year. Mother Jones does take a lot of pitches for the culture section. And if you would jump in and explain a bit more.
So the culture section in the print magazine, which I manage, is one of the great ways for freelancers to get their voice in the magazine, and we're really looking for distinctive voice for that section. That said, like we don't really run personal essays there. What it is we love reported essays, profiles, and dispatches, and so they can be fun, but they often combine criticism with historical research and reporting, conversations with academics, primary sourcing, and then also sometimes personal writing in there too, to make a point about a cultural trend or a question or new pieces of art. And we're interested in the way art intersects with identity and can illuminate cultural undercurrents or expose structures of power. And so that's one place. As Jamila said, we only have 6 issues a year. So we're really looking for pitches from people who understand the tone of the magazine and what we do and can prove, they're the right person to write something. They might have special access or just a great writing style and voice to bring it to light. We also have a food and health column, which often features freelance voices, and I can talk a little more about that later if people are interested. Um, One more thing I wanted to mention is we do have a magazine style online series called The Big Feature. That's another place we're soliciting freelance pitches. It runs every other week online, and it's cool because we do have a little more bandwidth to run long pieces and work with more freelancers, and it gets like the real magazine style spa workup with a lot of, our art resources go into it, promotion. And so I think people have a lot of fun writing for that, and it's a ton of fun to edit.
Excellent.
Oh, I'm supposed to mention one other thing, which is that 2 years ago, Mother Jones merged with the Center for Investigative Reporting, which is now our umbrella organization that puts out the podcast Reveal. So that's an investigative podcast that runs on, I think, more than 500 NPR stations. And we do work with freelancers with Reveal. I think, that's an area where they are looking for pitches, but definitely from people with a lot of expertise in audio production and reporting, and mostly investigative stories.
Okay. Well, I recognize some of the names in the chat. There are some investigative and radio folk in here, so keep in mind Reveal. So, let us hop into some questions. Okay, this is the stuff folks really want to hear. So you make sure your pens, papers, and otters are at the ready, folks, right now. All right. What is an ideal pitch for your particular publication? I want you to talk about the range of story lengths and or projects that you are typically seeking. Also, what's your email address? How's the best way to get in touch with you? Please let us know. And I'm going to go to Julia first, please.
Hi. Okay, so I do receive a lot of pitches, and the ideal pitch, I think, is not too long, but is not so short that I really can't get a sense of how you write. So I think in the first like sentence or two, I want to know what the story is about, and ideally, I want to know it needs to be more than a topic. You know, it needs to be a story. It has to have a point. There has to be some thesis or fresh idea that you're bringing to it. I get a lot of pitches that are sort of like, I want to write about X feeling, or X phenomenon or X trend. But those really, we don't really run those kinds of pieces, or we don't commission them. Um, then in an ideal world, what I would love to see is actually you writing out like the first two paragraphs of this piece, even if the reporting isn't there. Although, like, if you're going to have a main character of the piece and you're pitching it to me, I think you should have already found the main character, you know? So let's say you're writing about, a successful pitch that I had was about ADHD and the menstrual cycle. And you have either your story or you found somebody whose ADHD is extremely affected by when they're on their period, right? So you have that anecdote or whatever, and I can see that you know how to write and that it's compelling and that you've done some of the reporting already. And then I would like to see sort of like where this will go, you know, like a couple sentences explaining like how you see this moving. And ideally, I'd like you to link to a couple, at least one, maybe two stories that we have already run on the vertical that you're pitching. So, you know, it really should feel like a New York Magazine story, whether, you know, if it's for the cut, if it's for Intel, that you could sort of see it being in the same vein as that story. So, you know, that I can envision that you know how to write a New York Magazine feature because they are actually quite particular and they don't necessarily follow the same flow as at many other places. They're not funnel like. And so you know you should kind of have a sense of the word count and the feel and the scope that you could compare it to something that we've already done. Because I think if you haven't really familiarized yourself with us, it's unlikely to be successful. And then finally, I want to see like relevant clips, published clips that I can easily read. So yeah, that's what I'm looking for in an ideal pitch with a really clear subject line that says like freelance pitch and the title of the story. Oh, and my
Mhm.
email is julia.edelstein@nymag.com.
All right, say it twice. I'm a Gen Xer. I need it twice, like we used to
It's
leave voicemails.
yeah, Julia dot Edelstein at nymag.com.
Awesome. Okay, last thing for you, Julia. How many pitches, or forgive me, how many clips should somebody put in? Is it here's my portfolio site, or here are three pieces, or what? What? Tell us.
They just ideally links, so it's real ideal if you don't send a lot of big attachments. But if you can send me links to maybe like two or three pieces that feel relevant. If you don't have relevant clips, I think it helps to acknowledge that, like to say, I've written a lot about art. And I know I haven't written about parenting before, but like I have gotten very interested in it because of X, and I have a lot of nieces and nephews, or I just became a mother or whatever, so that I understand like why you're doing this pivot. Versus, you know, I think if you just send the visual art clips and you're pitching a health story, then that doesn't quite work. But I wouldn't be afraid to pitch me, even if the beat is new, if you really have a compelling story.
Thank you so much. Let me hop over to Keisha. Same thing. Talk about what's ideal for your publication. What's the range of the story lengths or projects? What would make, what would make your tiny little Grinch heart, not to say you've got a tiny little Grinch heart, but what would make it grow to see this pitch come into you?
Yes. Oh, but I do have a Grinch heart. So, and I'm sorry, we do say no sometimes. So I think what we're looking for is similar to Julia, you know, a concise but sharp pitch. We want to know what the story is about, why now, and why it matters. So really like almost like a really sharp nut graph as to what you expect the story would be. We'd love to hear what sources you're planning on talking to or already have in your notebook, and really how we can translate this story to real people's lives. That's really helpful for us. And our stories generally are 800 to 1200 words. We can go longer, but it's not easy because a lot of our partners can't run longer. They have real limitations on what they're willing to run. So I'm sure everyone's prose is beautiful and lots of longer stories would be great, but we're probably not the right fit for the 3,000 word beautiful feature that you're offering. So the shorter versions. And then the other thing is if you do have any conflicts of interest with other side gigs, we need to know about that up front. We don't want to have to discover those on our own. So that's really important. So giving us a resume, a couple clips with that pitch, and just disclosing up front anything that you have that has intersected with the healthcare space would be great. And in general, we want the stuff that other people haven't done. So please do a clip check. Make sure that this hasn't already been written about broadly on a national level. It's okay if there have been little pieces here and there around the country and you're connecting the dots for us and our readers, but we don't want stories that we could find elsewhere. But again, we want them to be relevant. So it's a little bit of a tricky thing to thread that needle. But we're really excited for our pitches. I'm going to give you the easy version of my email, which is kweir@kff.org, and I'll drop it in the chat because my first name is kind of a doozy, and if you spell it out the other way, but both emails get to me, but that's the easier way.
All right. Thank you so kindly. And Maddie, hop on in. Same thing. You know the drill.
Yeah, I'll try not to repeat too much. Those are really good pitch solicitations. So we are very interested in pitches that, really quickly can give us a sense of story, not topic. And usually that means providing us with an idea of who the characters would be, a sense of beginning, middle, and end for narrative pieces. Or if it's more of an idea piece or an essay, a provocative idea or an argument that already has a sense of what the evidence is going to be or an example. We want to know that you understand the magazine and its sections. I'm not going to talk about all of them, but for the sake of the culture section, that story is ultimately for the print magazine going to be around 2,000 words. And for our food and health columns, they're much more condensed, really research rich and dense, but they're only around 1,200 words or 1,000 words actually. So we want in the pitch for the writing to be stylish and energetic that really shows how you'd tackle a story and that you take language seriously and that you enjoy it. So really, I run away from dutiful pitches. I really want a sense of urgency, and this is, I think, really important. Why now? But it doesn't have to be like direct newsiness, like this protest in Minneapolis happening today. It could be more about kind of like a sense of newsiness in that it connects to a broader conversation or dilemma kind of in the air right now. Why does it matter and who does this affect? So giving us a sense of the stakes, and then why are you the person to write the story? Maybe it's your access or your voice or your connection. The length, as I said in the culture sections, 2,000 words. Oh, and features. If you're a first-time freelancer pitching us for the first time, like a short feature is probably the good length to aim for, and that would be around between like 2,500 and 3,500 words for our feature section. I think I covered everything, but feel free to follow up.
We will stay with us. I'm going to come right back to you first here, but
Yeah.
we writers, we journalists, we love our art, we love what we do, but this is about the money, 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 right? This is about the money. So here is the money question. What are your pay rates? Do you pay on submission, acceptance, or publication? What's the deal? Do kill fees exist at your place of business? And what if we're good at negotiating? Should we negotiate? Stick with us, Maddie. What's it like where you are?
Yeah, so the rates are based on a writer's experience or our experience with the writer, but for print, the rates usually start at $1.75 a word. And online, we commission very little online freelance content, but the rates are
Mm-hmm.
they start at 75 cents a word. Um, we do pay a third of the fee upon submission of a first draft. And that kind of can serve as a kill fee if we don't end up running the story. And then we pay the rest as soon as possible after publication. I've definitely heard from freelancers saying that they appreciate how expeditious we are with getting the rest of that fee out. So I think people like working with us for that reason. Um, and yes, you should negotiate if you're, if absolutely. I think if you've written for us, like, more than once, then the negotiating becomes easier. Um, so yeah.
Okay. All right. Keisha, what's it like at KFF? Should folks try to negotiate? But before you even answer that, what do you pay? What are the rates?
Yeah, so we typically start people off at $1.50 per word for their first story, kind of no matter what their experience is, and then we bump people up to $2 per word. And we will pay, if people are shooting their own photos, we pay $50 a photo for those if we end up using them. But we do have freelance photographers that shoot stuff for us all the time as well. We do have kill fees. I hate using them. I would really like to get the pitch in that we, get a pitch that we will run and then work with the reporter to really get it where it needs to be. But if we do have to do that, it's 50% of the original word count that we had agreed upon. And our word count again is like 800 to 1200 words. That's how we do that. And then the pay, we don't pay, although I like the Mother Jones model, until the story runs on our site. And then as soon as it runs on our site, we initiate the payment, and we have a 30-day cycle. So it should be to the reporter within 30 days of that publication date. Usually it's
Okay.
faster than that, but that's what we tell people for processing.
Lovely. So no real room to negotiate once you are in the system.
Not really. We are a little bit rigid in that way.
Mhm. But we know that now, so that's good. Thank you. Julia, New York, what's it like there?
So we also our rates depend on your on both like the challenge of the piece and the scope of the piece, as well as the experience of the writer. So for example, because I also our sites include the strategist, which some of you might know is a shopping site. So a piece that is like a shopping story is not going to be paid as at the same word rate as a very ambitious feature that takes you like 6 months to report. So there's a range there, but I would say for features, we usually pay a flat fee that averages out to between like $1 to $2 a word. There are writers who make more than that, who have a lot of experience for sure, and especially if they're working on something highly ambitious and involves a lot of reporting. But like a first time writer writing a feature for me is usually in the 1 to 150 a word element. We have a kill fee that is the standard one is 25%. And we also pay upon publication. Um, was there anything else that and then, yeah,
Yeah,
and I certainly encourage, there's certainly no harm in negotiating. It's not, I can't certainly, it's not a negative against you if you ask to negotiate, and I always do my best when somebody asks and see, and sometimes the answer is no, but sometimes I can manage to find some extra money. So
Okay, so shoot your shot, as they
yeah.
say these days. Shoot your shot. All right, so let's go to the legal stuff here. There tend to be three issues that freelancers really care about. when it comes to contracts. Number one, those copyright license terms. Is this work for hire? Number two, does the freelancer retain any derivative rights? For instance, to write a book or make a film later, develop a film based on the article that they initially offered to you. And finally, is the freelancer being asked to indemnify the publication from lawsuits? What are your contract terms on these three issues? Let's go to Maddie. You know what? I went to you first last time, Maddie. So this is the last time I'm going to you first.
No worries.
Keep it hopping.
I it's so funny because I feel like this is one of the things that like scares me away from being a freelancer is having to really deal with this stuff and understand it. And it was kind of nice being forced to like fully grasp what my own publication's stance on this. And I learned some things talking to our legal counsel actually, because we're a little bit rare in that we do so much legally sensitive investigative work that we're kind of rare among a lot of magazines in that we fully indemnify our freelance writers unless they do something unethical during their reporting or writing. And so because of that, we are mainly work for hire. And we tend to hold more copyright because we are taking responsibility for it. Sometimes and this is, especially for radio, if someone has done like a whole cloth investigation and all the reporting is in, they may, in the end, hold more copyright. It really does depend, though, on the project and how much we're investing in the project. If someone comes with us with an idea, well, and then we're putting a lot of editing resources, etc., and commissioning them and sending them to do the reporting, then it's more likely we'll hold more copyright in the end. There are some exceptions, like if we're publishing an excerpt of a book that's already, basically out, then the copyright's going to look different. They're going to hold more of the copyright. But yeah, I think that's, none of this is fully set in stone. Sometimes it's negotiated. It's part of the negotiation of a contract. Uh, yeah.
Yeah. And I did want to go to Mother Jones first because, yeah, clearly. So again, it's a shoot your shot, case by case kind of thing. But there you go. Okay, Keisha. So let's talk about the contract stuff with KFF. You deal with health. Take it away.
Yeah. One thing I should say, and I don't know if this is how the other folks do it, is we do a contract that is not based off of the story, but we do it, it's good for the calendar year. So once we get that paperwork done, you can do subsequent stories with us throughout the calendar year without having to go through it all. But our contract itself does not grant us the copyright to the freelancer's work, but it does grant us a license to the copyright and all other related rights. It's not work for hire, but everything we do, we put out under Creative Commons license. So that means that the freelancer can use the work for under those provisions, and any other news outlet can as well. So you can't repurpose that exact piece elsewhere because it's already out there in the universe. And then we do ask freelancers to indemnify us. And we would defend our published journalism by freelancers if it has gone through our process and, know that there are no knowing omissions or misrepresentation on the part of the freelancer. It's not, I think, formally part of our freelance agreement. Fortunately, we haven't run into this a whole lot, but we would back up our journalists if there were ever an issue. And we have a good team of lawyers who work with us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Julia, you got a lot to hop in with, so take it
Yeah.
away.
Um,
Contract stuff.
yeah, I can't really speak on behalf of New York Magazine. I can only, I guess, speak to my own experience with contracts and tell you, I guess, like what I've found there or what I know to be true. Each contract, and part of that is because the contract terms for every individual piece at New York Magazine are confidential, outside of the rate. Um, and some of the contracts are work for hire, and others are licenses, meaning that the writer retains the copyright. Um, and that's something that's negotiated and is often reflective of the type of piece it is, like a personal essay, for example. In many cases, the writer will retain the license for that. Um, Sometimes it depends on where the idea originated, but like stories for the strategist, for example, are I think 99% work for hire. In terms of the indemnification issue, similar to Mother Jones, we stand by our stories and we will, in defamation cases, my sense is that, New York Magazine stands by its writers and defends its stories, but there is that same exception that if a writer were to plagiarize a piece, something in their piece, or to use AI inappropriately, or were to invent facts, um, that would kind of make that defense, our protection of
Yeah.
the writer moot. So it's I guess a two-way street, in that sense.
Okay. Well, let's stick with you here, Julia, for a second. The next question I've got, um, please give an example or two of a freelance pitch that really worked well for you, and tell us why did it resonate so well with your publication and with your audience. So, um, New York Magazine, what made you happy when you got that pitch, and why did it work for you so well?
Um, so I mean, I'm proud to say there have been a lot of freelance pitches that I mean, maybe not a lot. Obviously, I get something like 10 pitches a day, so it ends up being a very small percentage, I guess, that make it all the way. But I think I do probably accept more freelance pitches than many of my colleagues. One piece that, did really well, that was a hit, was a writer pitched me a sort of investigative piece about a story, a place called the Borum Hotel, which was a postpartum hotel for new mothers coming out of the hospital with their newborns. That was sort of infiltrating Instagram with a million very glossy ads about the five-star experience that moms were having at this place, that was coming into conflict with true accounts of people who had stayed there. Um, and what was great about that piece was, or what was great about that pitch was it was like centered in New York City in this sort of elite, expensive world that if you read New York Magazine, is something of constant fascination for our readers. And so it really felt like a New York Magazine pitch. It also incorporated like so many tentacles of things that like do well with our readers. Motherhood is like extremely interesting, postpartum and birth experience, um, and also the city. And it like there was a lot in this story about sort of like how is this place licensed? It's just a floor in a random hotel. Like why are they people leaving their newborns here in this wing of this hotel? And it was just sort of like very juicy and interesting. And she already had a few people lined up to talk about it who had stayed there. And so that made me feel like she was going to be able to pull it off. It really was a hard piece, and it took months and months and months to pull off. But I think that was somebody who like really had the idea and knew where to pitch it. Like we were the perfect place for this piece. That play, the story itself ended up possibly contributing to the closure of that hotel. So that's one. Yeah.
Excellent. Uh, Keisha, so I have to ask the same, of course, of you. What pitch really hit where it was supposed to, resonated with the audience, and tell us why it worked.
Yeah, I do want to say, Julia, I remember that story. It was a very memorable story. I've absolutely read it like top to bottom. So big success there. I also would say we have lots of freelance pitches that I, feel proud about and the end product. I'll talk about one. It was from a reporter that we worked with, and I'll share the link in the chat. And what was nice about her pitch is this was about medical assistance in dying. And we have, there's a lot of stories that have been about in the news about it lately in Canada. In the United States, we have very patchy policies around it in the states. In most states, you can only do it if you're a resident of the state. But there are two states, Oregon and Vermont, that allow tourism is the wrong word. I'm sorry to be on something so sensitive, but that you can go and travel there and they have very strict requirements. But she proposed a very narrow story on the travel that some people are doing to end their lives when they have a fatal medical condition. And she actually had a real person in the pitch. So for us, it was like she had the people, she had the policy and how it varies around the country, which is, a great area for us because we've got 50 healthcare systems in a lot of ways in this country because every state has their own quirky things that they do. And tapping into those nuances can be really interesting. So she had a good character, she had policy side, and she had something that is like just a really complicated, painful issue. And so she did have another piece to the pitch that we didn't end up taking, and she ended up, I think, having it run with the Washington Post because we just didn't have bandwidth for multiple stories about medical aid and dying. But it's a good example of like just a very clear pitch. It wasn't too big a bite of the apple. It was very narrow, and she had a compelling character to tell it through. Who was willing to kind of go on the record and talk about her experience of going back and forth to Vermont and just the challenging nature of figuring out this really complicated end of life journey. So I think she did a good job with it. It was a relatively contained feature and was a nice pitch and process start to finish.
Okay, thank you,
Sorry for the
Maddie.
downer of a topic, though.
No, well, but it was as somebody who loved that particular story so much, it's information we need. So there we go. Maddie, what worked really well? What made you happy and it resonated and people should take note?
It was a little unfair because I had more time to like pull up the pitch, but I we ran this piece about Bessel van der Kolk's The Body Keeps the Score, and the pitch from this wonderful journalist Emmy Neatfeld was the subject line of the pitch was great. It was this book spent 248 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list. Did anyone actually read it? So immediately I think, okay, this is something that has enormous impact, that is very popular, but there's something I don't know or that I'm not seeing. And she very quickly goes into what a lot of people have missed about the book. She did a real deep read of the book, as she herself says she's a survivor of PTSD. And what are the things that stood out to her that weren't being talked about? She also, I would say, so the essay ended up being about kind of how van der Kolk does some victim blaming in the book and is turning people away from cognitive behavioral therapy and talk therapy in a way that she found damaging for herself. And that a lot of psychologists and neuroscientists have criticized, and she ended up interviewing several of them. So this became a reported essay. She had reporting woven in and statistics, but it was very personal, and it was about an enormously influential cultural artifact. So it had just like hit a lot of different boxes. It was provocative. And the other thing I loved is that it was really a relatively short pitch that got to the point very quickly and packed like quite the punch. And something I'm often telling reporters is that it takes a lot more effort to write short. If you can really write a short, impactful pitch, that shows that you've really put time and thought into things. And, you've kind of like taken me aback with it. And she really did that. And we even had something I'll mention is that, we had a back and forth after the initial pitch. It was missing like I wanted to know who she was going to talk to or who her sources were. So we had a little back and forth. That's usually the case with pitches. Like, I'll have some questions. We might chat on the phone. I'll bring it to an editor's meeting. So, you know, it, I don't think that there's ever been like 100% perfect pitch that will answer all questions, but that's not a problem. It has to get, you know, just meet a certain bar where it like, really piques my interest, and then I want to invest in talking through it and pursuing it. And that this one really did that.
Super. Okay. So, speaking of quick, to the point, I'm going to ask a few questions and everybody just come off mute. Not necessarily lightning round, but if you're compelled to answer, we would love to hear it. Just introduce, remind folks your market again. Not that they need that, but let's do that, and see what happens. So, alas, I'm a freelancer and it feels as though I'm pitching into a black hole. Editors, oh, editors, what can we do to grab your attention? What should we not do when pitching you? Hop in if you want to.
I would say what not to do is don't pitch to multiple people the same idea at once. That is just hard. We go through our process and then we come back to you and you're like, oh, actually somebody else is taking it. We're like, why'd we waste the time? So just one per customer. We'll try to give you a fast answer. But if we don't, please ping us because we're drinking from a fire hose and we sometimes need the reminder that we haven't gotten back to you. So I apologize for that. But we try to give you an answer, a yes, no, then you can move on if we were a no.
Yeah, I would echo that. Like if you're gonna, I totally like I can't respond to every pitch because I'm getting, they're all unsolicited essentially, and I'm getting too many of them. But if you're going to take the pitch to another publication, it's totally understandable. But I really appreciate you sending me an email first to let me know that you're doing it because I have had situations where I've written back to a writer said I'm going to bring this, to somebody. Then it's taken a while because they're swamped, and then when I come back to them, they already sold it to another publication, and that's just a waste of everybody's time. Um, yeah, I would say I don't know, it's hard to get our attention, but I would just say like polite follow-up emails and really clear subject lines help for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I think for me, like if you send the pitch and then you haven't heard anything, it's fine to follow up once after like 2 or 3 weeks. Because sometimes things do get, you know, down in the inbox,
Mhm.
but also getting a ton of pitches and can't respond to every single one. Although sometimes I try like after 6 months to just like send a bunch of blanket responses. Um, uh, but then after the 2 or 3 weeks, like if you do plan to pitch it somewhere else, you could follow up once more and say, because I haven't heard from you, I'm going to take this elsewhere if I don't hear back by Friday. So that's like kind of the last follow up. But I really
Mhm.
discourage people from sending like 3 or 4, just like, hey, like making sure you saw this because, if I am reading or, looking at these pitches, I can't follow up on everyone. But I start to get
Mhm.
it starts to feel like a lot when I get like 3, 4, or 5 emails from the same person just saying, making sure you saw this. So I would discourage that.
Okay. All right. Let's go granular real quick. What should people be writing in the subject line for a pitch, in the pitch itself? Do you have a preferred day of the week or, week of the month that you want to hear from people who want to pitch you? Do they need a detailed explanation in the pitch of what the story will be, or is there any way you're okay with maybe the contours of this idea? Um, when somebody sits down to write the pitch, can you kind of, as much as you can, not knowing what the pitch will be, piece by piece, what would make it most likely to land and get a response from you?
When I'm working with a freelancer who I've worked with before, then I don't mind if, and we have and I know that they can write. Uh, if they have the beginning of an idea, I don't mind if them, saying like, "Can I bounce this off you? Would you be interested in a more developed pitch?" And then I'll say yes or no. Or sometimes I've even commissioned a reporting memo, like for a small fee, asking them to develop the pitch with some reporting. But if it's a freelancer I've never worked with before, then I won't have the bandwidth to develop the pitch with them. So I would need it to come in like kind of fully baked. Sometimes I'll ask them, I'll respond if I'm interested. I'll be like, this is a good idea, but like how, I'll ask them essentially to like send me a better pitch. Like, how would this look? Well, can you send me an example of another piece we've run that is similar? Who would you interview? And then I can judge it.
I'd
Does it
say
matter if the pitch comes in on Monday or Wednesday or Friday?
Just don't send it on the weekend because like that's then you're guaranteeing that I'm just reading it on my phone and I will 100% forget to read it again or forget that I read it. But other than that, I would say Friday is not the best day because I'm usually like racing to finish things. So, yeah.
I would say for me, there's no one day of the week, but earlier in the day is better. If it's like so late in the day, usually there's just like a million things that I haven't done that I'm racing to do. So, but it doesn't really matter, and we're dealing with people across all different time zones, so that doesn't matter. But I think a catchy subject head, like, and saying that it's a pitch, that also helps me sort through in my email when I'm going back and trying to like, gosh, did I respond to this person, or like, where is this pitch? So that's helpful. And then, a sexy headline of like what you think the story would say, that will also help get through the all of the many emails that we're sorting through.
Yeah, I think like if you can say, the subject line can say pitch colon topic or, story. But then I'm putting our freelance writer guidelines because it really clearly spells out the different sections of our print magazine. So if you ideally you're pitching to a section, which is I think pretty clear in those guidelines. So your pitch could say mixed media, which is our culture section, mixed media pitch, and then that just helps winnow it down even more. And if you are pitching that, then you'll also know the word count that we're looking for, and you can clearly spell out in your pitch that this is the word count you envision your story. Um, I think you know on top of the other things we've already talked about, if you can say um, you know kind of like loosely, quickly describe the form you think the story will take. So. Um, and that can sometimes be experimental, but maybe you'll even like sketch out a loose structure of the essay, in a few sentences. That could really go a long way. Um, and as we've talked about, like mentioning, two of the sources, people you imagine talking to. Um,
Excellent. Okay. Uh, AI, just going to say AI. Do you have expectations around AI use? What should freelancers understand about those? For instance, do you want contributors to disclose any use of AI in reporting, writing, editing? Are there any official policies that you need to let freelancers know?
We don't allow the use of AI in any writing, so that's our policy. You can use AI for transcription, and you can use it like if you were able to build your own GPT, for example. Let's say you're writing a really complicated investigative piece and you have a lot of primary documents that you need help looking through. You could use AI as like a research assistant to help you, let's say, find mentions of all the conversations on a certain day, or the way that people are probably using AI to go through the Blake Lively text messages right now. I'm imagining you could use it like that, but then you would need to make sure that what you did was accurate. Those are the only really approved uses of AI right now at New York Magazine.
Yeah, and for us, similar, we don't want you using it for writing. And if you do use it for your reporting, we really want you to disclose that to us and obviously check everything. I'm going to also share in the chat our ethics guidelines for freelancers and staffers. The real key to us is disclosing how you've used it. And I mean, there's some assumption that if like you're using Otter to transcribe your interviews, like that's AI stuff, and there's going to be a certain element of that. But if you're doing it for, writing code, if you're doing data journalism or any of that reporting technique, we actually encourage it. I think it can be a really powerful tool, but we just want to know what you're doing, and then also that you've checked it with human eyes to make sure the work is accurate. But no writing, please, and definitely do not put your pitch into AI, to be written because that will just be a disaster.
Yeah, same here. We don't, condone it for writing, or really editing. If you're using the AI tools like transcription and to some extent like data analysis, could incorporate AI tools, but should also get human review. So we definitely don't want AI generated material to ever be the source of a statement or fact that's not also fact checked by a human. And then, yeah, transparency is really important. So if AI is being used, you
Mm.
know, in the reporting process, if it's a big part of the reporting process, we would definitely need that to be transparent or a part of the story. Um, yeah, I think there's like lots of
Okay.
little situations that could arise, and everyone's kind of still trying to get their head around um, exactly how to respond to each case. So I think it's always better to be transparent than not.
Okay. Excellent. Transparency above all. And yeah, let your editor know. Let us move along to some audience Q&A at this point. So while I'm working to get some of these questions, I do want to do
I
a
can help
very,
out.
very yay.
I'm happy to help
Super,
out with
yay.
that.
Anne Marie to the rescue. Super quick, hands only, lightning round questions while we queue up some Q&A. Simultaneous submissions. That's a no from everybody I've heard. Am I right? No, you do not simultaneous submission. Or at least disclose it, but that's a no. Okay. Follow up with a pitch in a few days, yes or no. If I don't hear by Friday, I'm going to send it to someone else. That seems to be okay with everyone
I think
here.
I would say a few days is not enough time, but
Okay. A week. A week.
2 weeks, yeah.
Okay, 2 weeks. Yeah, a fortnight for our British friends. A fortnight then. Multiple story ideas in the same email. Cousin Beyonce's coming to town. She's my cousin. I can get to her. And if you don't want that, we could talk about the economics of kitty cat litter instead of ice or salt for ice. Those two very different story pitches in one email. Is that okay or no? One story idea to a pitch, or multiple is okay. Yes or no? One. I see a one.
I think if you've written for us
Okay.
before and that maybe you would
Okay.
have a pitch
Okay.
email that had like two ideas that we would talk through more, but that's usually for people where, we already have a
Okay.
relationship with.
So Mother
Otherwise,
Jones
one.
needs okay. Mother Jones needs a relationship. New York needs one.
Just
One
because
pitch
it's
for
easiest for me
yeah.
to forward, there's a good chance,
Yeah.
especially if they're that disparate that I'm not going to, I need to be able to easily forward it to somebody else if needed. Yeah.
Okay. Lovely. Okay. Keisha,
Multiple's
is there
fine. It does
yes.
make it harder to kind of communicate with our team about it, but that's fine. But I think yes, it's also easier with people who we have a relationship with to kind of put multiple ideas in. But I think a sharp idea is the best, a single sharp idea.
Okay. Um, who accepts multimedia or audio pitches?
We do.
Okay.
especially for something that I could direct to our reveal team. But we also often publish, especially for bigger investigations, we often publish the story in multiple formats. And so we need to, we'd love to know if you have great audio recording along with your reporting or you've taken video. It's something we would probably love to run with if we're going to do the story. Yeah.
We do
Lovely.
a lot of audio and we do a lot of like social media videos and things. And we do some stuff with broadcast TV. We haven't had freelancers working on a lot of that. That doesn't mean that we won't, but we haven't. So really the best course for freelancers is text stories to pitch. If you do have those other skills, let us know. But I think for right
Okay.
now, text is where our freelance energies are.
Lovely.
I would say text also for us.
Okay. And that was Juliet, New York. So lovely. Thank you so much. So Anne Marie, help me out here. What
All
what do
right.
what do the audience wish to know?
Well, Julia, we have a few different questions for you on whether or not story pitches need to be based in New York.
No, they don't need to be based in New York, but they do need to have like a New York, and I mean that as a New York Magazine and a New York City sensibility. So with rare exceptions, stories that are set in extremely rural locations, like somebody sending me a pitch about like a small town in Texas, like is not going to be a fit. And I do get pitches like that. It helps because a lot of our readership is national, but there's like a certain urban sensibility that is like appeals to us more. But they don't have to be in New York. But if they're really set somewhere completely somewhere else, it's a little strange, I guess I would say.
Right? That's very helpful. I think for all of you, we have questions about like the length of pitch you'd like to see. So I wonder if we could just take turns. Julia, since you're already here on camera, length
Mhm.
of pitch you like to see?
The pitch itself, maybe like 400 words or something like that.
Awesome.
Stories I edit are between like 1,000 words and 5,000 words.
Okay. Keisha?
I would say if it can fit in the screen of an email on my computer screen, that's good. Like if I have to spend a lot of time di reading it to understand what the story is about, that's going to slow me down and slow down my response. So pithy and well crafted is better for me.
Awesome. And Maddie.
Um, I would say up to a page, which I think, I guess it depends. Maybe like between 500 and 800 words can work. But if it's on the longer side, and sometimes they are a little longer than that for, investigative features. But if it is, like, we still want to get a lot of information very quickly. So that first paragraph, tells us what this story is and, why it's different than something we've read before and what the stakes are and, how it connects to maybe a larger philosophical question or newsiness. So all of that is still coming very quickly. And then it might elaborate to give us a better sense of what the sourcing would be and, how you'd go about writing it.
All right. When should writers assume it's a no? How much should they follow up with y'all before a hint should be taken? Maddie, since you're still here.
I think I mentioned before, like after 2 weeks, maybe doing one more follow-up. And then if you're not hearing back after, a week or so after that, it's probably a no. But, sometimes it does. Yeah, I think, uh, after like a month, if you really haven't heard anything, it's probably a no.
All right, Keisha.
We do try to get back to people, but I would say after 2 or 3 weeks, if you can ping us, and if you haven't heard, I would assume it's a no. But I do like to communicate with people, and so I apologize if I don't get back to you quickly, but we do try to close the loop with you.
Awesome. And Julia.
I would probably echo what Maddie said, like about 2 to 3 weeks. If you followed up once and you haven't heard back from me, that's safe to assume.
Awesome. All right, that's very helpful. I think we talked about all of you kind of sound open to multimedia pitches, but generally speaking, do you expect freelancers to be coming up with the visuals for their story?
No, we don't.
I think we welcome input. You know, if you have a thought about how a subject, one of your sources, and something that's really compelling visually, we'd love to hear it. We also, in our case, would take if people have recommendations on where they think we should pitch the story for our primary partner. We're open to hearing that. But we definitely can take care of the visuals. We will welcome also if our freelancers want to take photos, especially if we have folks out in rural places and they're going to be interacting with a source, like go ahead and make photos of them and send them our way. And if we use them, we'll pay you. We can send a freelance photographer out, but especially in the rural places, it's sometimes hard to get somebody out to kind of get that person who you captured in the moment. So if you have visuals, send them our way.
All right.
Yeah, we tend to take care of that. We have an art team and a photography editor who assign work with a lot of really great freelance photographers and illustrators for our print magazine, especially.
Awesome. Maddie, let me keep you. I feel like I'm picking on you a lot. I got a couple questions here about a couple different things you oversee. Could you talk a little bit more about the big feature? Whether that's like a kind of category or is that more like a regular reported piece? Um, and then I have a couple people who are really interested in hearing more about freelancing with Reveal. So anything you could share there.
Yeah. The big feature, it is just kind of a place where we run features. But we only have 6 issues a year, and each issue only has about 4 features. So we have an opportunity to kind of run more than that through this online um, series. And right now, we're kind of thinking about our priorities, and we are looking for things that maybe aren't quite the right fit for the magazine, in that maybe their style is more experimental. We've run stuff like this in the past. Or, we're a little more open to like personal essay-ish type feature writing. So it could be an expanded essay, whereas in the magazine it's only 2,000 words. We would maybe run something a bit longer online. Um, One experimental piece that we did on the big feature was a reporter who called up everyone in Jeffrey Epstein's little black book of contacts. And so that was sort of fascinating and really creative, you know,
Awesome.
creative pitch from the outset and
Creative pitch.
has been very gotten a lot of web traffic. So yeah, that's kind of an example of what I mean by like an experimental um, piece that we wouldn't have run in the magazine per se.
And for Reveal, specifically, someone's asking, should you include audio in your pitch if you're trying to pitch
Yeah,
Reveal?
the reveal pitch process, I basically like I would pitch the reveal team directly, not go through a Mother Jones editor. But sometimes what happens is if you are pitching a feature or an investigation to Mother Jones, and you also have audio, you could say, I also think this could be fodder for a reveal episode. Um, the reveal team, for pitching reveal, whole cloth episodes or segments, they definitely require audio or samples of past audio, and they kind of have their own set of guidelines for those pitches, even though our newsrooms are like sort of melded, but also sort of separate. But yeah, if I think the main way you would come through me, for instance, is if you're pitching a story that you think could also work for reveal, then we'd definitely love to hear that from the outset, and we would love to know what your audio, uh, yeah, what sort of reporting you have under your belt already.
I feel like maybe this is a question for both you and Keisha. But is it possible to pitch stories for both, like for text and audio?
Yeah.
What do you say in your pitch if you'd like to do that?
Um, I guess like you could just say, I think it would be good for both, but I also think that you'd want to make clear how each one would be distinctive. And I would probably pitch, um, I would probably pitch with the eye towards like, I think this is, you know, a text piece that might have legs as an audio, or I think this is like an audio, this is a podcast episode that could have a companion print piece, so that like it's kind of clear which one you think it would most fully would most fully sing as.
I would say for us, given that we don't currently accept a lot of, or don't accept any audio freelance stuff that I'm aware of, that if you are going to do that, really make a case for what your audio chops are, because I would have to kind of elevate it to our audio team and get their buy-in. So having that at the ready would make my life easier. And we really, I think, would only work with people who have a fair amount of audio experience and uh, can show that to us.
All right.
And again, I'm no promises because that's not my team, and they don't aren't currently accepting. They just don't have a ton of bandwidth, and they're working with a ton of people already who are kind of part of our network.
For sure. Um, there are a lot of questions, and I am going to really try to get to all of them, but we are running out of a little bit of time. So it's down to how fast I can talk. Um, we got a great question. How do you all feel about working with freelancers who have secured funding and support from a fellowship? Are you able to commit to working with them?
We feel great about it, but we'd still want the pitch to go through our normal processes. But sometimes it can give a pitch an edge. Like, this is a really ambitious idea. I need to go to Iceland to prove part of it. And I already have funding to do that. That might be if everything else is like really hitting, but it's like, oh, do we have the resources? And then you can say, I have resources to cover reporting, that can really help get things over the edge, over the,
Awesome.
yeah.
Same with us too. I would say that we will pay even if you don't have, I mean, if even if you do have funding, or we've sometimes had student journalists and they say, oh, I don't need to be paid because it's for credit, but like we will pay people. And then the other aspect is if you do have outside funding, we should know at the outset who that funder is and whether or not there's an obligation to have any kind of tagline on the story explaining that funding, because we have to vet that through our development side to make sure there are no conflicts on our end.
I would echo. It's come up a couple of times and it hasn't been a problem. I would say it's obviously good for the writer, but we would still pay our standard rate. And then yeah, the question would just be, do we need to mention that they're a fellow of this reporting project or wherever whatever organization? And so it just needs to be revealed up front.
All right. Lastest question, Maddie. I think you said this, and then a question popped into the box immediately. What do you mean by dutiful pitches, and why do you run away from them?
Oh yeah, dutiful is like basically I think of it as, writing that's just doesn't have a lot of energy and is kind of, repeating stuff we've heard before or cliched, and it's just kind of like we have to get through this and it feels like homework to read, and it's like, let me tell you with the voice of God this information that that it just feels like we kind of, I have to put it here, but I don't really care about it. And so I think whatever the opposite of that is sort of what I'm hungry for.
Awesome. All right. I think that's everything we have time for. I'm going to toss it back to Jamila, but thank you all for your answers.
Okay. And I want to thank you, Anne Marie, for hopping in just now. So, Julia, Keisha, Maddie, thank you so much for your time today. Everyone in the audience, thank you so very much for joining us. Again, we here at the IJ appreciate each and every one of you, and let's make this a great new year. Please make sure to follow on all the requisite places. And there are plenty of resources and calls to action in the chat, and join the Discord, which I'm sorry, my ADHD won't let me go to Discord, or else I'll forget what I'm talking about right now.
Slack. It's Slack. We don't use Discord.
Oh, Slack. I said, damn it. Okay, forgive me.
It's okay. You're over there playing video games. It's fine.
Exactly. That's what I'm up to these days. But I want to thank each and every one of you for your time this fine day. And please make a play to get over to theiij.com/webinar. Make sure you subscribe to our newsletter for information about the IIJ conference that's coming up. There's an IIJ Substack as well. And we provide these webinars as a service to the community. Please support our work if you can. Any amount is wonderful. They are tax-deductible donations. The link is there at a Donate Stripe link. Any amount helps, and it is all appreciated. Please join the IIJ Slack, and you can connect with the team here and other freelancers. And the big reminder, of course, is that our 2026 live conference will feature the first ever Pitch Fest. So there's info at theiij.com/sessions, plural, SESSIONS-26. So please take a look at those things, and we are delighted to have you here. And with that, we are concluded, friends. Let's make this a great year. Let's make this a productive year. Let's make this a lucrative year. And it's a delight to be with you. I'm Jamila, and I'm honored you let me do this. Thank you.